Hello, Ryan. How are you?
Great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic because today happens to be one of my favorite days of the week, the month, the year, and that is when Jen, as the CEO of Publish Purpose, get an opportunity to have an amazing conversation with someone like yourself because today is the big day. So today is launch day for your book. So, how excited are you at this very moment?
A mix, a dichotomy of excitement and nerves. Somewhere in the middle there. But
Yeah.
so much going on and so excited. And there's been such an outpour of people that I've reached out to that are just so supportive and loving and old friends, new friends,
Mhm.
work colleagues, nonprofit friends, and just like everyone in between. And
Yeah.
it's just been so lovely. I mean, there's been a few people I messaged, I couldn't remember who they were. And then, come to find out they're like, oh, I'm so happy to
Oh,
see you on this journey and to purchase your book and to support you and to spread the message, which is really love. It's all
mhm.
about love. So
That's so
um,
good.
that got me back into my heart space, which made me a little less nervous and more excited.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so before we get too into the details here, I would love if you want to just take a minute and kind of talk about your book because I feel like your title is exceptionally compelling. My drug dealer brought me to God. So I feel like it says so much, but then doesn't say anything. So do you want to give like a little synopsis of what the book is actually about?
Yeah. So when I was really little, I always knew that I was different. I was like different than my brother and my friends that were males and my stepdad and my dad. And I was like, why am I so different? And why do I like different things than that? I don't love sports and I don't, I like arts and crafts. And why am I so different? And this really evolved into this like at a young age, knowing that I was like separate from other men, that was different than the men around me, at least. And I had this really deep relationship with the divine, with God. And throughout my childhood, by the time I was 6 years old, I had my first thoughts of ending my own life. And then it just got worse and worse, like drugs and alcohol and suicide attempts and all kinds of other mental health issues and challenges. And really, it's centered around this thing of me feeling like God hated me. And I felt so different. So I was like, why wouldn't he hate me? Because I'm so different than everyone else. And it was really hard. And so I fell into this hard drug addiction. And long story short, my drug dealer, of all people, shared her story with me, which then led me back to my divinity, back to my version of God, which is like an all loving, creator, universal energy type of God. And and so that's why I was compelled to share my story. I said, if with my drug dealer shared a story with me that led me to God, what can my story do? And what can it also let others know that they have a story? Like what other pieces are there in this that everyone else sees that they have a story to share as well? So the
Mhm.
big piece is like, I want you to know that you have a story to share no matter what. And you can choose to share that privately in like a journal just with yourself. You can choose to share that with a close friend or family member or spouse or child. You can choose to share that with a group of people in a small group, in a large group. You can write a book. You can do a million different ways to share your story and share your life.
Yeah.
But I promise you, when you do, it affects people. It helps break down barriers. It
Mhm.
allows things to open up. It allows learning and growth and love and acceptance and compassion and empathy to really blossom. So,
Mhm.
that's really the main mission of the book. I mean, obviously, the title's My Drug Dealer Brought Me to God because that's who brought me back to this place of learning how to love myself,
Mhm.
learning that no matter what or really unlearning what I was taught by, society or religious institutions, that I was divinely loved, innately loved just for who I was. And I had to learn that from this piece of not knowing that growing up and feeling so vastly different.
Mm. It's so good. Do you happen to have, I should have asked you this before we went live. Do you happen to have a copy of the book on your desk or somewhere nearby? I feel, yeah, good. Okay. Your cover is very striking. So I want you to show it to
Oh,
folks.
it's a little too bright, but
Yeah, it's got like a fluorescent vibe going on right now.
let's see. Well, there's one of these little camera
Yeah.
things. Let's see.
Yeah. I think there's a, if I'm not mistaken, there should be an image attached to the post that this is with. But so, at what point did you come to Because I love what you just said, because it's so much about, it's not about you and your story necessarily. It's about how that story is going to impact someone else who might have been in the same position that you were in at the time. And maybe they can read your story rather than have it be a drug dealer who's sharing their story. So you can kind of help, maybe help them bypass some hurt and pain and any other of litany of things that might occur. But what was it like? What was that tipping point in your life, or a conversation or something, where you recognize, like, I have to put this in the form of a book?
Wow. So that was a couple years ago. I had started I started kind of doing these voice recordings, like audio journals, and I was doing them as I was at the creek. So I called them like creek um, ramblings or something. I don't remember what I named them, but I had them all on my phone, and I was just really like, this was a special place to me. This creek was in my backyard. I would always feel so connected to God, to my grandpa, who had passed away right before that time. And it kind of had not the same journey as me, but a parallel journey. And as far as like, he struggled with mental health, he
Mhm.
struggled with suicide, he struggled with loving himself, he struggled with his relationship with God that eventually he really built and really healed a lot of himself. And so I felt a connection to him because when I was really little, he used to take us hiking to the creek. So he was my first creek hike. And actually, the creek that I was in was a tributary of that watershed. So it was a connected
Mhm.
creek. So it felt really powerful. And I was down there recording these just, ramblings about life, about what I was going through, about like knowings, as I call them, like these knowings that I got thrusted upon me. Sometimes
Mhm.
they weren't even, mine. They came divinely to me. So I was doing that, and then I would let people listen to them. And so I let a couple of friends listen to them, and one person in particular said, this should be a book. And I said, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not really. It's not really my vibe. I said reading, writing, and then who would have known a year or two later, I went back to school to get a doctoral degree. And I'm like, of course, there's reading and writing all around me. But I was like, no, not really. I don't think that's really me. I said, maybe I'll do a podcast or something. I said, I don't know. I just feel called to share them. And I had one particular friend, his name was William. And he said, you're going on a trip. So I was planning this trip, and I was going out of the country by myself for 8 days. He said, you're going to be by yourself. He said, this is your time to record, kind of like what you've done with the other thing, but your whole story. You know, I think you've been called to do this. And I was like, yeah, I know I have been, but I would never want to admit it to myself or anyone else, because I was like, like my mom had been through the publishing journey, and I had friends that had published, and I was just like, I just don't, it just seems, it doesn't seem like it's a good fit for me. I just didn't, I just not, I wasn't vibing with it, but there was something inside that was like, you need to share your story. And I would share my story at events all the time, nonprofit events. I was the executive director for a nonprofit called Love Must Win for about 5 or 6 years. And so I would share all the time about my journey and story, very authentically, very openly, a lot of things that most people probably wouldn't share in a public setting. And I felt this really beautiful sense of belonging when I shared. And I felt this sense of healing for myself and the people there. And people would often come after the event, or up, even or raise their hand during it and say like, wow, like I can relate to this, or like my son has went through a similar journey and now I can understand him more, or this or that. And it was like this connection that was built, and this through the communication.
Mhm.
So at that moment, I kind of put my ego aside and said, sure, I'll take a stab at it. Let me record this on my 8-day solo vacation in Dominican Republic. So I went there, and I recorded 20 hours, roughly 18 hours or so, of this audio journal.
Yeah.
That then later on, me and a manuscript strategist, Fern Pessin, who is amazing. If you're ever looking to kind of have someone help guide you in the process and work through everything, Fern is like
Mhm.
the best. And we sat down and just started working away and said, how can we make this into something that's more manageable? 20 hours is a little long, as Jen
Yeah.
would probably tell you. I was like 600 pages or something, probably.
Yeah.
Um, something crazy like
A
that.
little too long.
So we narrowed it down. We pulled out some things. We extrapolated. we then took all those, it's kind of it's a memoir, but it's also a self-help kind of genre in the memoir category. And then we incorporated a 40-page workbook that goes along with the chapters. So the first half of the workbook is really diving into your traumas through looking at your triggers of your current life,
Mhm.
and also just kind of diving into what's made you so far. And then
Mhm.
the next half of the workbook is really at like these exercises that help you dive into more understanding and knowing of yourself in a deeper way. And also, there's some meditative and visualization and mindfulness practices, as well as there's a really cool exercise around gratitude and around giving called the tenfold return. There's just really cool stuff in there to help kind of solidify this learning and growth that you might have had in the first part of the workbook, and then take it to the next level. So like it's what I'm studying in my dissertation for my doctorate. It's post-traumatic growth. So
Mhm.
it's not just resiliency. Like Brene Brown would talk about resiliency beautifully. I wish she was
Mhm.
a third person on this. Oh, I'd
Me
be so
too.
honored. But there's something beyond resiliency, and that's post-traumatic growth. So that's having trauma, getting back to like a resilient state, and then going beyond that. And that's the piece of growth that's like this transformational
Mhm.
piece where you're then able to help other people learn and grow through situations that you went through. And there's just these amazing avenues for yourself. I mean, this self, um I don't want to be too like broad and say self-love, but like you almost learn how to have true love for yourself
Mhm.
through that growth beyond just resiliency, because resiliency is amazing, like to bounce back from trauma,
Mhm.
like 10 pats on the back. But if you can have growth beyond that, even,
Mhm.
it's like out of this world. So
Mhm.
that's what my hope is through the workbook, and then through my journey, because that's kind of my journey, my mom's journey, which is shared in
Mhm.
part of the book, and the kind of lead up in the book and in one of the first chapters. And then my partner shares a little bit. So he writes a portion of a chapter, and we all have similar journeys of like this disconnection with the divine, disconnection with God,
Mhm.
feeling alone, not loving our, kind of just being on this lost kind of journey. We have this pivotal. We had a lot of trauma. All of us had trauma that looks different. And you
Yeah.
can read about it. But ranging in all different things. And then we get to this place where we have some type of awakening or some type of shift, as I call it. And then we have this growth beyond that. And now our goal in life is really to help other people um, get to that place of just knowing yourself and
Mhm.
understanding your trauma, understanding your triggers, and then understanding how you can learn about yourself, like your true self, and then
Yeah.
really give yourself some love, and then help then ripple that out to other people. So
Mm.
it's really about getting that love out there. Like I said, not just for yourself, but for others. Because as you love yourself, and not to get too woo woo here, but as you raise your vibration as a human, the
Mhm.
whole planet's vibration lifts. But it
Mhm.
also directly really impacts those around you. So your relationship with someone that's strained, or your relationship here,
Mhm.
your even your neighbor, like it as you raise your vibration, as you feel healthy internally, spiritually, mentally, physically, it helps other people also
Mhm.
raise their vibration and elevate them. So, not to get too out there on the spiritual, but there's definitely some of that in the book
Mhm.
too. So, but I think it's really balanced. It gives you a real world example of what one LGBTQ kid went through um,
Mhm.
as an adult, how he, you know, got through that. So I think
Yeah.
it's powerful in that way. But I also I have friends that have these amazing stories, and I'm like, this should be your book.
Mhm.
And it's always a reminder for me. We always, all of us, always have a story to share, and it's our story, and we don't
Mhm.
have to share it when we don't want to, but it also kind of limits some growth for others when we don't allow to share. At least,
Mhm.
start out small and start out sharing with yourself, just being authentic with
Yeah.
yourself, in a journal or whatever. But
Mhm.
sharing is important.
Mm. Yeah, and I feel like this is so good because so often memoirs are typically, I don't want to say just memoirs because I feel like just kind of makes it seem like no small feat, like, oh, no big deal. You put your memoir together. When a memoir is one of the hardest things to do. And I've written my own. I get it. Like, it is a very, very difficult process. But on top of that, you then went and added a workbook into it too. And I think that that is a very different and unique combination from any of the other books that we've worked on where they are memoirs. And again, I don't like using just, but like there's one, it's like a different product, if you want to even call it that, right? So there's the memoir and the story and the depth, and like you really connect with the reader. But I love that you took it one step further and actually created a workbook where people can look to see and kind of relate with your experiences and then translate that into their own lives and then have some outlet that you have intentionally provided to kind of work through whatever those things might be coming up for them. And I feel like that's what's really unique about your book in particular.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Jen. I People have given me different advice on this, but I put that workbook on my website for free so that if
Mhm.
people are renting it from a library, or using it for a small group, using it or just wanting to print it out so they can follow along as they read and they don't have to like flip back and forth, it's
Mhm.
on there for free. So
Mhm.
I did that on purpose because I wanted it accessible to all different kinds of people,
Yeah.
and that's really why I marked down um, my ebook
Mhm.
to 299 for launch, because I wanted it accessible for so many people and wanted to have that workbook there too, so that it's really everyone,
Mhm.
and I'll be honest, if you emailed me and said I don't have a dollar to my name, I would
Mhm.
send you the free version.
Mhm.
And I'm probably not even supposed to say that, but I just
Mhm. Say it
just being
away.
honest, I
Yeah.
would send it to anybody that needed it, because it's, to me, the money piece will
Mhm.
come or whatever will come. That's not, it was all about the mission, the message. When God put this on my heart was, you need to share your story so other
Mhm.
people can share their story, and so people can learn, and so that a pastor can pick up this book of a church who maybe
Mhm.
isn't, we don't want to, isn't affirming, so, or it might be accepting or welcoming, but not understand what an
Yeah.
LGBTQ person has went through.
Mhm.
And maybe it just opens their eyes or opens their mind or opens their heart just a little bit more to
Yeah.
be a little bit more understanding of what some people go through. And it's just one person's story, but maybe
Yeah.
it inspires them to reach out to talk to other people,
Mhm.
or to start a program at their church or whatever. I mean, it's applicable for many people, not just the LGBTQ
Yeah.
plus community, not just the mental health community, not just the recovery community. I mean,
Mhm.
it's real, not just the faith communities. I mean, it really goes deeper than that. I mean, I think it could be really utilized for 12-step programs,
Mhm.
for peer support groups, for book groups, for, it just, I really see it being a catalyst for
Mhm.
movement and conversation. And that's really why I decided to also do my book tour a little different than most people, or like my launch event. So I decided to do like 8 to 10 events in the greater Cincinnati area, where I go in person and help create a community conversation
Mhm.
around one of these intersections, or one of multiple intersections with between the LGBTQ plus community, mental health, addiction, and recovery,
Mhm.
being a single father, faith,
Mhm.
the gamut.
Yeah.
And so I decided that I would rather do that. So I'm going to do a small reading for those events, and then we're just going to have a conversation. It's going to be like a roundtable conversation. Depending on how large the audience is, it might be a little different than that. But and that was really intentional, because my whole purpose of writing this was to help create conversations, to
Mhm.
get people talking, to get people thinking, to get people into their heart, to give
Mhm.
people some ideas for ways they might learn and grow. And I don't think, I think I'm really excited about it. It's been a long process. So when you're like, oh, just a bit more, I was like, oh, it was
Yeah.
such a process. So,
Yeah. It really is. I remember when we were brainstorming like what your launch would look like and how important it was for you to be able to meet people in the community where they were. And I think a lot of times people just assume, it's launch day of your book, you're going to do this big fancy glamorous type of event, and like every author is different, every book is different, every topic is different, and the impact that you're going for can be different. And so I think it's still, obviously I thought it made sense when we talked about it. I think it still makes perfect sense now that you're doing all of these like littler focused events, because I think that's going to be where you're bringing in kind of that wisdom and magic of what your book is about to like really leave an impression on at least the people that are showing up in that space. And then the goal is that those people go somewhere else and now they've learned something and now they're impacting somebody else, and it's that beautiful ripple effect that so many people can be impacted by. And I think that's to me is the really exciting thing about your book in particular, because I do see a very clear cascading type of effect for so many people to benefit from.
Yeah, I'm so excited. There's events like Mental Health of America is doing an internal event for their staff. One of our only community centers in Cincinnati's hosting the first event. It's our LGBTQ kind of one-stop shop, smaller community center. Then some churches
Mhm.
and spiritual centers, and really just wanting to talk with people about their experiences, and learn from them too. Like, it's not just me,
Yeah.
being on stage and telling people what to think or believe or feel. It's like learning about other people's journeys and experiences, and as I share mine, my hope is that they'll share theirs with me and with everyone else, and that we're all kind of learn and grow from each other. And it won't just be like a, I'm going to read my book for 30 minutes, or an hour, and I'm going to
Mhm.
read little excerpts or chapters here or there, but it's really going to be mostly just a conversation. Like, I think those are so valuable.
Yeah.
I leave those type of events or situations feeling inspired, feeling
Mhm.
like I've learned something. So that was really my goal with it.
Yeah.
We held an event at Love Must Win every month called a safe haven for many, many years. And it was this kind of the same focus. Like, we brought in some type of speaker, but really it was like, a small presentation or talk. And then it was like a conversation,
Yeah.
and people learned so much all the time. I mean, all kinds of
Mhm.
people. We had all kinds of people at these events, and I had people that you just wouldn't expect to come to our certain nonprofit events that would be like, oh wow, I really look at immigration differently now, and I'm not going to use certain words I used before to,
Mhm.
I'm gonna call them undocumented citizens or
Mhm.
undocumented peoples instead of using words I used to use. I didn't realize that was bad, and like,
Mhm.
and we had things all the time. I mean, it was just beautiful. People would come together and just share and
Mhm.
learn, and all in different parts of their journey,
Yeah.
and youth to 70 or 8, 89, all the way up. So
Yeah.
that's my goal in these, is to
Mhm.
replicate something similar to that, and really do that justice. So I think
Yeah.
I have a good starting point, and excited to dive in and help
Mhm.
create some ripples of love. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're in good shape on that front. And as we kind of started off by saying, this is launch day. So sometimes I have conversations with authors that is, days or a week or even months past the actual launch day. But today, like, you're in the throes of launch day. If I recall, you have not actually slept. So why don't you share before we kind of like wrap up and tell people how to get the book and whatnot, like just your emotional state as it stands right now while we're talking.
Ah! No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, me and my partner stayed up last night. We started around midnight. We had a friend that just had surgery, and so we went over and brought her dinner. It was her birthday, so we brought her dinner and a cake, and we got home a little late. And we thought we had like 3 hours of work to do. We're like, oh, we're gonna send these direct messages to friends and family, and 2,000 messages later, and no sleep, and lots of coffee for him. I don't do caffeine, so water for me, coffee for him. Here we are, and he's like in the other room checking, making sure he has my phone, so he's making sure everything's like in
Mhm.
order. And honestly, I had a minute to like freshen up and go sit outside and meditate for a minute, and the sun was shining in on me, and I really just thought, wow, how grateful am I for such a wonderful partner who would stay up all night for me. Like, that's something I always dreamed of my whole life.
Yeah.
And then just the gratitude for all these amazing people that, some I've been close with, and some are, practically strangers that have reached out and just been like, I'm
Mhm.
so excited. I know this is going to help people. There's people that have read the first few chapters just like on preview and are like,
Mhm.
I'm going to send this to all my clients, and like,
Yeah.
and all of these things like help mitigate some of that anxiety from putting yourself out there. I mean, I share things in this book that my daughter's going to read, and everyone can have access to.
Mhm.
So, and it's a lot, and so there's
Yeah.
this anxiety with it. Like, it's scary,
Mhm.
and then it's also scary. Like, what if it fails? What if it doesn't do well? What if you have those
Mhm.
fears? And so I really mitigated that today in that moment when I said I'm going to take a minute to sit outside and sit in the sun and
Mhm.
do a little baby meditation, a mini meditation, and
Yeah.
really got me back into that place of gratitude and feeling And it was really like my partner was what pulled me back in. And then I was able to be grateful for all these other things because I was
Mhm.
like, I'm so grateful for him. Cause I was like, well, do you want
Mhm.
me to, check my phone and do it? And he's like, no, I'll have your phone. I'll take care of all your messages for right now. And,
Mhm.
and if people need something or whatever. And that's like just so amazing. And it really just set me on this like spiral of gratitude.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
good.
really where I'm at right now. I'm just so
Mhm.
grateful. This is something 2 years ago, I was sitting around just this time. It was maybe a month ago, 2 years ago. So, um,
Mhm.
2 years ago and a month ago, 25 months ago, I was on the beach in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic recording this all by myself. At one point, I had shared a really cool moment in my story around faith and around this really like miraculous occurrence. And all of a sudden, a shooting star
Mm.
went across the sky. The only shooting star I saw, and I'll be honest, I was in kind of like the city part, and so the lights were bright, and you couldn't really see
Yeah.
any stars. And there was just one beautiful shooting star, and so I was like, "That's just how you know." That to me, people are like, "Why do you believe
Yeah.
in God?" And I'm like, stuff like that. Like that's to
Mhm.
me just how I. That's
Yeah.
my God. Like my
Yep.
God's shooting stars and beautiful
Mhm.
moments of gratitude with love and really is love. And so
Yeah.
I had immense gratitude outside for my partner and
Mhm.
for really for God and for which to me is love. God is love and love
Mhm.
is God in my eyes and in my heart. I don't want anybody to pick up this
Good.
book thinking, oh, this is going to be some type of Christian rhetoric or whatnot. I
Mhm.
mean, there are things about my faith in there, but it's not. It's
Mhm.
more about just a journey through faith and what that looked like
Mhm.
for me. And it's never like preachy. I had
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd sent out this to many people, and one person responded back and said, "I'm agnostic, so this is not something that
Mhm.
is for me." And I honored that and said, "Of course, if that's what you believe, but let me explain
Mhm.
a little bit more before you write it off,
Yeah.
because the title itself can be something where people are a little misunderstood, maybe my intention, um,
Mhm.
but also like it was very divinely guided, and."
Yeah.
And one of my friends, who's a New York Times bestseller, sold 1 million copies of his book, literally told me
Mhm.
that it's a crap title, in the most loving way. He said, you can't have that title. And I said, I can't change it. I said, I absolutely can't change it. I was called to make it that. And
Mhm.
it's what it is. And he supports me. He's amazing.
Yeah.
But it was just funny because he's like, it's not too late to change it. And I'm like, I already
No,
have
it's
my proof.
perfect. Yeah. No, I think your title is perfect. We
Yeah.
would have absolutely gone down that path had I felt otherwise. But no, I think your title is perfect. And I think if anyone is watching this and they're looking at the title and they're thinking, "All right, I am agnostic, or I'm more spiritual, or I'm not," because you were just saying like the Christian rhetoric and whatnot. Look at the description of the book, because I think if you look at the description of the book, it very clearly kind of creates more context to what your intentions are behind the title itself. So that is my PSA, is just read the description at the very least. Go to Amazon, go to Bookshop, go to Barnes and Noble, wherever you want to buy it. Just kind of take an extra minute to kind of look into it. But are you still? I know you've been doing pre-orders and many of them. Are you still doing sales from your website directly? And is that what your preferred way that you would like people to support you?
So today on launch day, my favorite way is for you to get onto Amazon right now, 11 to 1, so 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and buy that ebook version of the book. It's $2.99. It's marked down. The way Amazon does their algorithms and their stuff, it's I need it bought within those like hour or two to reach Amazon bestseller status. So that's my like number one ask.
Yeah.
Number two is, sure, buy the paperback or um, hardcover versions. You can buy them from Amazon. You can buy them from my website. If you want a signed copy, come to one of the book signings.
Mhm.
Um, hey, you want me to come to Sedona or Phoenix, Arizona, or New York or wherever? Just send me a message and we can chat more about that. I would love to. I love to travel just for it's one of my personal favorite things to do. But
Mhm.
also, I would love to get into other areas of the United States or wherever, to share some messages of love. And yeah, you can buy it on my website anytime, ryanjosephAllen.com, Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
Mhm.
whatever you feel comfortable. I had a couple people today say, I absolutely won't buy from Amazon. I said, that's great. Here's my website.
Mhm.
I had one
Mhm.
person say I didn't have enough money. I said, I'm going to send you the free version,
Mhm.
ebook version for you. So
Yeah.
it's accessible in many different ways. So yeah, but today, if you are purchasing, even if you're not a huge Amazon fan, please purchase it
Yeah.
from 11 to 1 Eastern
Mhm.
Standard Time.
And
And
it's already a number one new release. So you're already right out of the gate. You already got the number one new release badge, which is impressive because I feel like we were discussing this hours ago. So
yeah,
I think you're on a good trajectory to hit all the things that you want. However, we do need your support. So if you're watching this, whether you're watching it now while we're during that live launch window, or you're watching this at 8 o'clock on launch day, just go do what you can to be supportive of this, because the more that people kind of go and support the book, the more that Amazon also kind of promotes the book to others that wouldn't have found it otherwise. And that's kind of the one of the big drivers for trying to get that concentrated group of people in here and helping lift, the rising tide floats all boats, right? So that's what we're trying to do here. This has been a very beautiful conversation. Do you have any final parting words before we conclude?
well, I took a deep breath because I was like, not sleeping, and there's so much going on, and um, yeah, I got the message. It was just be you.
Mm,
Simply just be you. You're beautiful how you are, how you were created,
mhm,
no matter what you believe or, about spirituality or divinity or God or whatever. That doesn't matter. Just be yourself and love yourself, because as you love yourself, you're able to love those around you more. And
mhm.
as I talked about the woo woo stuff,
Yeah,
as you raise your vibration and raise that love in you, it really does change those people around you. So
mhm,
it's an inner job, and it's a lot of work. And I
mhm.
have one friend who's new on her spiritual journey, and she's like, I thought this was going to be easy. And I was like, well, you rather live I mean, it's not always super easy, but I will say it's like super rewarding and beautiful. And I wouldn't change it for anything, my journey. And, to watch other people on their journey through similar things, it's like always so amazing. And even, the triumphs and the trials and everything in between. So
Yeah,
just know that you're good where you're at. You're
yeah,
exactly where you need to be, and you're
yeah.
amazing. So
Mm.
that's number one.
It's perfect. Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much. I will obviously, you and I will be in touch as you are climbing the rankings today. And then, if anyone wants to purchase the book, the links are in the description. Wherever you're watching this video, the links should be below. So go ahead and support where you can. And we will talk very soon.